Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series, where the cat, originally from Hannibal, Missouri, spent a lot of time in Kansas City, and now he's a New York City jazz drummer, Matt Kane. We caught up with him a day after learning that legendary rock guitarist Eddie Van Halen left the proverbial show. He passed away at the age of 65 on October 6, 2020, and his impact has reverberated throughout the world of music and beyond. Eddie's father was a jazz clarinetist, so both Eddie and drummer Alex Van Halen grew up with jazz as a backdrop. Van Halen is a big reason that Matt even played music, and for this radio host here, it's why I love music as much as I do. Together, this interview would not have happened if it wasn't for Eddie and what he did for music. We talk about that and a lot more. Enjoy.
On this occasion, the day after, I wanted to catch up and kind of eulogize the rock god that I'm sure played a huge role in all of our lives, and I know in yours based on your social media posts. Eddie Van Halen, 65, has left the room permanently, and I just want to know from you, as you know, you're known for jazz, but you're a musician. What did Eddie do for you?
Well, in 1983, when MTV came to my hometown of Hanibal, Missouri, and I first saw Eddie in the the Hot for Teacher video, and he's walking down this table playing a guitar solo, and it was so striking, the level of comfort and fluidity that he had with his music. I think that was maybe one of the first allures, and of course he was just cool, right?
Yeah.
He was just cool. But as I got more into it, Van Halen was the first band that I was like, this is my favorite band. This is my favorite music. I'm putting their posters on my wall. I'm going out and I'm getting the music. So when I first went out and at that point, the 1984 album was huge. And I went to the store to buy it and they were all out of copies. So
wow.
So I was like, well, I'm not leaving without a Van Halen album. I'm going to buy one. And so I bought one called Van Halen 2. And there was a song on there called Light Up the Sky, and which had a drum solo by Alex Van Halen. So the more I listened to, Eddie's music and Alex's drumming, the more I listened to it, what it really did was it opened this door to musicianship. Like I really didn't have any idea of what musicianship really was, and when I started really putting my ear to their music, sitting in the basement for hours by myself, listening to those albums on headphones, I was hearing musicianship on a very high level, and you can hear a lot of jazz influence in Eddie and Alex, especially. And so it kind of it began this process towards jazz in a strange way, because, their father had been a jazz clarinet player. Alex had basically been doing gigs with his dad, on drums, and Eddie was, highly influenced by that. And so, like, their music, it just wasn't hard rock or heavy metal. I mean, their music was expansive, especially rhythmically. They it wasn't just like a pounding, eighth note rhythm, like you would get from maybe like Black Sabbath. It was a very finesseful type of rhythm. And the more you listen, especially to Eddie, his grasp on rhythm was incredible. And with his brother Alex, there was a certain kind of improvisational element to it in a way, and just the kind of like the rhythmic finesse that they played with. It definitely wasn't just stock hard rock and roll or heavy metal or anything like that. I mean, it's, you could call it rock and roll, but it was musically expansive. And so it kind of like set me on this path that, eventually led to, Led Zeppelin, and then on to Chick Corea, and then the rest is, history.
Yeah, man, I love that answer. What a great timeline. And, I got to wonder, the thing that got me, when these cats leave, I think they're always with us, no matter what. It's like we didn't personally know Eddie, and I think that anytime you know someone personally, it adds a different kind of layer to things. But, you know, Eddie's always going to be there. The music is always going to be there, no matter what. Even when the band broke up, you know, pre-Van Hagar, post-Van Hagar, we didn't know what was going on with them. We always knew that we had Eddie. We still know that now. But I'm wondering in this modern day and era with so many of these cats, and I know they had diseases that were incurable or they just went out of control, but how much do you think 2020 is playing into the health and the fact that these guys can't natively do what they want to do? I mean, all of the cats that are healthy are on this boat where there's trauma because you can't do it. What do you think it did, or what do you think it could do to somebody that has something that is like cancer, where they literally can't even get out and play a show?
Wow, that's a deep question. You know, I think it's different for different kind of levels of you know, of the game. For instance, you know, for those of us that are playing jazz to small audiences, you know, when things start to open up again, we'll probably be the first to get out there to play. You know, I mean, I'm already doing some social distance gigs and that sort of thing. But when you're looking at somebody of that stature, you know, guys that are touring to arenas, and those are the only venues they can really fit into and they can really play. Man, I mean, there's a huge infrastructure behind a band like Metallica or Kiss or, you know, whatever. And that's a lot of guys without work. But as an artist, for those guys, as an artist, I think it forces them, like you're seeing some of these guys start to do podcasts. You're seeing, you know, like for instance, I know I've watched a few videos of Steve Vai, who is doing live streams or like podcasts from his studio, and he's talking about things that influenced him, or he's talking about guitar sounds or whatnot. And some of these like heavy duty, you know, rock players are kind of opening their homes to, you know, to let people see how they live, or they're doing, you know, they're trying to keep something happening artistically. And so, like, for them, it's a whole nother ball of wax, I think, than for us involved in jazz. But at the same time, I think there's similarities, too, because, like, you know, your creative impulse and drive, it has to do something, or it's gonna collapse back inwards on you and mess you up. Like that energy, it can't stand still. So it has to go outward or collapse inward. And I think it's just up to the artist to you know thyself, so to speak, and be able to find a way to deal with the creativity and your energy. And I mean, this is part of being an artist too, right? I mean, it's like we have to adapt, and so they have to do it just as well as a jazz player. So. You know, I think everybody's in the same boat in that respect.
Man, this is great. Matt, thank you for opening up. I got to tell you, I remember being a kid in front of our old duplex in Liberty, Missouri, and we ran in knowing when the world premiere of Hot the Teacher was coming on. And, dude, when those papers started flying around that table and Eddie was walking on it, and just all of that imagery, the black and white, and just there were so many levels of that was artistically done so well. I mean, that might have been one of the biggest premieres that ever happened on MTV, because I know the next day at school, everybody did nothing but talk about that video.
Big time. Yeah, that was, you know, that particular video too, like encapsulates Van Halen, in my opinion, and that song. I mean, that song has everything, every element of Van Halen that made them great. You know, I've scoured the internet, you know, for Van Halen videos to hear what they sounded like live in the early days. And I've seen some clips of them playing that song live that are so ripping and just so incredible, man. It's like, I mean, one thing I got to add to the conversation, you know, that like musicians can kind of latch onto this. Is like one thing that really that I got from that particular song, Hot for Teacher, and just all the Van Halen stuff, was that like there's these kind of similarities in rhythmically what they were doing, and eventually what led me to jazz. And like that tune, Hot for Teacher, is a perfect example where like a lot of the phrases in their music resolve to the and of four. And, that's one of the big connections that I always made when I started learning to play jazz. I noticed that jazz resolved to the and of four as well. And, that to me, that's like a big connection, you hear Eddie and Alex resolving their phrases to the and of four rather than just a big, anchor down on beat one. They resolve to the and of four, which gives this music this lift. And so when you think of the opening bit to Hot for Teacher, when the whole band launches in, and they resolve on the and of four, which gives it that lift off. And so like, and to be honest, man, a lot of hard rock and metal music of the 80s had that. But I think Van Halen were definitely one of the first to bring that to the table, the resolution to the and of four. And like, musicians are probably the only ones that are going to know what I'm talking about. But to me, that's the hippest connection between that song in particular and, the kind of like the Van Halen musical vocabulary. That led me to be able to understand like a jazz flow a little more, like that and of four resolution. That's some total, rhythmical nerd speak, I guess. But I try to hit my students to it, make that connection for them too, because it was kind of a revelation for me.
That's wonderful, man. That's great. I'm glad you added that right there, poignantly at the end. So, man, thanks, Matt. Thanks for opening up about this, and long live Van Halen, man. I know I spent some time seeing them live, and, they'll always be there for sure.
Oh, man, big time, man. I appreciate that, man. It was a gut punch to learn that Eddie's died, and he had a rough way of it for a lot of years, and he's the perfect example of an artist. No matter if people like his music or not, nobody can deny that this guy was a heavy-duty artist. And I mean, if there's anything to take away from him, that's it's all right there. So yeah, man, it's sad, but at the same time, we can think about it now and maybe a little bit different light, celebrate him. And oh man.
Yeah,
it's been wild. Been kind of a wild ride.
yeah, it just keeps adding to this very surreal year and what's going on. But at any rate, Matt, thanks, man, and stay safe out there.
Thanks, Joe, for thinking about me for that, man. Eddie Van Halen I probably wouldn't be a musician, without sitting in the basement and just dissecting all the Van Halen albums and Fair Warning and Diver Down and Van Halen 2. That block of records especially. I mean, man, Van Halen 2 is really the one for me. But, all of those, man, I wouldn't be playing, man, I don't think, professionally. Because, figuring out all the Van Halen music, for me anyways, that prepared me to be a pro. That's why I was able to start gigging when I was 15. I went to my first audition, and I played the drum solo from Light Up the Sky as a warm-up just to see what the guys would do. And they all turned around and they were like, man, was that Light Up the Sky? And I was like, yeah, it was.
That's right on. That's beautiful. Beautiful.
So, dude, I might not even be a musician. We might not even be talking if it wasn't for Ed and Alex. Man, we got to give it up to him, man. And I'm not the only one.
It's a jazz show, and I wouldn't be probably doing this if I wasn't influenced as much as I was by those guys. They were huge on my love of music. So we're in the same boat, rowing down the same diver down. So, yeah. But at any rate, well, cool, Matt. Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Stay safe up there. And until next time, keep on putting the good stuff out in the world.
Thanks for listening and tuning into another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in New York, New Jersey, Hannibal, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Matt for his time and dedication to the music, always. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Big Bad Billy, Sweet William now. Yeah.
Neon Jazz.